Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Joint Committee on Consumer Protection Professional Licensure. My name is Taki Chan. I'm the House Chairman. To my left is Senator Paul Feeney, the Senate Chairman. And want to bring a few things to your attention as a housekeeping matter. We do have your sign-up sheets. Anyone who has not signed up, please sign up at the front, and they'll deliver it to the end here and put it on the computer screens behind us. We do not have a computer screen behind us, so we do not get to see your names. But everyone is on a 3-minute clock to testify. If you have a panel, it's 3 minutes each. You can see the clocks on both sides. And we have an annoying buzzer I don't want to hear. We found out last time. Jumped out of my skin when I heard it. So be mindful of the clock. Also let you know there are recording devices, as you can see right here, as well as around you. We do permit social media, texting, Facebook Live, media to be here. So if you're going to come say something or do something in the audience, be mindful that you are being watched as much as we are. So if someone has a question what you did, they direct it towards you, not me. What else is here? We are joined by a number of members in no particular order. To my right is Representative McKenna, Representative LeBoeuf, Representative Livingston is the vice chair. To my left is Representative Driscoll, Representative Dahm. And that's all for now. As you may know, there's a lot of other public hearings and meetings going on. Members will be coming and going throughout the course of the hearing. We're going to start this day off by opening an executive session to move through a few bills. So I need a motion to open executive session. So moved by Representative Livingston, second by Representative McKenna. The executive session is now open. The committee and your staff had received an advance notice of the executive session bills. And we're going to go through them very quickly at any discussion. House Bill 2000, an act relative to licensure of swimming pool builders and service contractors. Chairs are recommending it be passed as redrafted. So moved by Representative Livingston. Second by Representative Dahm. Any discussion on this matter? There being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those say nay, nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 295, Representative McMurtry and Rush, an act authorizing the town of Dedham to grant one additional license for sale of beer and wine to be drunk on premise. I need a motion? Motion by Representative Livingston, second by Representative Dahm. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 3991, Representative Day, an act amending certain liquor licenses in the town of Winchester. The chairs are recommending ought to pass. I need a motion to do so. Representative Livingston moves. Representative Driscoll seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 3993, Representative Murray, an act authorizing the town of Milford to grant one additional liquor license for the sale of malt and wine beverages to be drunk on premise. Chair recommends ought to pass. I need a motion. Motion by Representative Livingston, second by Representative Dahm. All those in favor, any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those say nay. The ayes carry. House Bill 4078, Representative Campbell, an act authorizing the granting of additional licenses for the sale of alcohol not be drunk on premise in the city of Methuen. Chairs recommending ought to pass. I need a motion.
I so move.
Motion by Representative Livingston, second by Representative Dahm. Any discussion? There being none, all those say aye.
Aye.
To say nay, the ayes carry. Senate Bill 1288, Representative Humiston, an act authorizing the city of Hampton to grant 8 additional liquor licenses for the sale on premise, 4 licenses for malt and wine on premise, 1 additional license for sale of water and wine for not on premise. I need a motion.
I so move.
Motion by Representative Livingston, second by Representative Dahm. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
They nay. The ayes carry. A motion customary to the committee practice executive session. We're going to keep the poll open on these bills for members coming and going to vote during the course of the session, and the executive committee will reopen. So I need a motion to put executive committee into recess. Representative Driscoll motions reset, second by Representative McKenna. The executive session is now in recess. At this point, we're going to open the public hearing. We are hearing basically 3 bills, House Bill 4078, House Bill, Senate Bill 17107, House Bill 218. Just for sake of housekeeping, is anybody here on House Bill 4078? It's a home petition regarding Methuen. All right, we can skip that. We're going to go straight to Senate Bill 107 and House Bill 218, its companion. First up on the list is Arthur Torrey from the United, Spano Association Artists Asylum. You know the microphone is on because you can see the red light come on in front of you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate this chance to come before the committee today to speak about the Digital Repair Bill. My name is Arthur Torrey. I live in Burlington, Mass. I've been transporting here for about 9 years. And I'm here to support the right to repair. And there are a lot of people who will talk about various reasons why right to repair is good. It takes me a lot on buying electronics. Because I mean,
Maybe that works better. Should I start over? Okay. My name is Arthur Torrey. I'm a resident of Billerica, and I'm vice chair of the Billerica Disability Commission. I'm also a member of the United Spinal Association and a member of the Artisans Asylum Makerspace in Somerville, where I spend a great deal of my time working on fixing and doing various things related to equipment of different sorts, especially mobility related. And I'm here to strongly support the right to repair because that is something that has saved me a great deal of energy and let me have better equipment than I might otherwise be willing to afford in terms of general electronics. And I would like to urge the committee to consider expanding this bill slightly to encompass consumer-owned medical devices or adaptive equipment, such as this power chair. Right now, if my power chair breaks, I'm stuck at home for probably 6 to 8 weeks while dealing with insurance and the medical equipment dealers, unless I'm able to repair it myself, in which case I can order parts off eBay and have them the next day. And so being able to repair my equipment preserves my mobility. And I need to have access to the software. I'm running stuff that's 20 years old because I can get, without manufacturer authorization, the software that I need to be able to reprogram the electronic modules. To get something that's more modern, I would have to buy, only they won't sell it to me, a $700 dongle in order to use the software that, again, I can obtain readily without manufacturer authorization, but that I could program my own chair to make it fit my needs and my abilities, which is going to be different from what other people with different handicaps would have. So this is a very much of an ability to be able to customize things to make them work. And I find it ironic that I can go down to the auto parts store and buy whatever I want to turn my minivan into a fire-breathing monster without necessarily even being qualified to fix my brakes, but I can't fix my 4-mile-an-hour power chair myself because, oh, you might hurt yourself. I have never run into such condensation as I find from the mobility equipment industry. And this is something which I would like to be able to have the right to repair my own equipment more than what I'm already doing because, without anybody's permission, because it would make my life a whole lot easier and let me use more modern things. For that, I would like to thank you. I do have written testimony. Where would I hand that over?
Thank you. The court officer will take your written testimony. Thank you, Mr. Torrey. Any questions to Mr. Torrey? There being none, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next up, I have Sara Faye Pierce, Director of Government Affairs for the Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers, along with Tim Johnson, Lisa McCabe, Priscilla Oliveira.
Okay, good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Sara Faye Pierce. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers. We represent major appliances, portables, floor care, so anything from your refrigerator to your Roomba vacuum to your Ninja blender and electric toothbrush and pretty much everything in between. We're here today in strong opposition to both the House Bill 218 and the Senate Bill 107. Really, and you're going to hear much about this from other witnesses as well, this bill is really a solution in search of a problem. Number one, a lot of the critics that we hear, or the proponents of this bill, say there's not access and there's not opportunity, and that couldn't be further from the truth. A survey of our members this year shows incredible and broad availability for repair. In fact, we have 19,000 repair options available across this country. That does not include Canada. We have more than 80% of those are independent, affiliated, who are certified to repair the brands that I represent. 90% of that 80% are the smallest of the small businesses across this country, between 1 and 10 employees. So we are really truly providing a pipeline for these small businesses to flourish in their communities. 20 states, as I'm sure you're well aware, have examined this issue this year. None have taken action because they agree this is a solution in search of a problem. Consumers have choice today. Once you purchase a home appliance, the position of AHAM is that you have the right to choose however you want to repair that product, whether it's by yourself or to seek some other independent, whether it's not affiliated or affiliated with our brands and our manufacturers. That does not mean that we support the fact that anybody has a right, if you have a business license, to get access to the intellectual property of those brands who are offering those products for sale. We have a number of concerns with regard to this legislation, safety being one, the top. First and foremost, anyone who comes into the home to repair those appliances that have broken down or who need a replacement parts must be vetted. They must go through proper background checks and certain security screenings to make sure that not only they're capable of repairing that product that has been broken or is in disrepair, but they also have, there's security and there's a confidence that that homeowner has when those individuals are entering the home. As I've said, technicians are required to have multiple certifications if that independent business is affiliated with our OEMs and our brands. And wow, that was worse than my alarm this morning. Let me just run through these very quickly and then I'll wrap up and hand over to my colleagues. State certifications for handling electricity and gas. EPA 608 certification, which requires a special certification to handle refrigerant gases. This is incredibly important currently, as right now we're in this massive shift of, I feel like I just lost my mic, massive shift away from these high global warming potential gases into less impacting gases. I'm not sure what happened to my mic.
We did kind of losing the mic here, but can you just pass the list on to the person next to you? We can read it from there, so we can move the testimony along,
sure.
please. Because I can see the list from up here. We don't like people reading too much.
Oh, sure. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, but all I'm saying is that these certifications must be maintained, again, to ensure that these are safely repaired products. Thank you. Do you want us to go in order?
Okay, good afternoon, chairs, vice chairs, and other members of the committee. My name is Priscila Oliveira, and I'm the state policy analyst for AHRI, the Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this testimony today. So AHRI represents more than 300 manufacturers of air conditioning, heating, water heating, and commercial refrigeration equipment. It's internationally recognized advocate for the HVAC industry and certifies the performance of many of the products manufactured by its members. HRI respectfully opposes House Bill 218 as its mandate that original equipment manufacturers, OEMs, make available to independent repair providers any part, tools, service manual, software, or information for the purposes of diagnosing or repairing digital electronic equipment made by the OEM. AHI represents companies dedicated to manufacturing and installing highly effective and efficient heating, cooling, water heating equipment, and also commercial refrigeration systems for the health, safety, comfort, and productivity of the residents of Massachusetts. However, the equipment our members manufacture and install is complex and requires highly skilled professionals to service and install it. One of the primary reasons HR believes it's critical the HVAC equipment only be repaired or maintained by licensed professionals is to protect the environment. If not properly installed, maintained, or repaired, HVAC equipment, including cutting-edge, energy-efficient technologies, will not provide important energy savings benefits and will undermine energy efficiency initiatives. In addition to these concerns, equipment warranties could potentially be nullified if service were conducted by an unqualified contractor. A manufacturer's warranty is critical for consumer protection and confidence in the equipment they are purchasing. HR respects the intent of this legislation, but to avoid these unintended consequences, we believe it's necessary to narrow the definition of digital electronic equipment and amend the bill's language to include an exemption for the HVAC equipment. That's all I have, and thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, chairs and members of the committee. My name is Lisa McCabe, and I'm with CTIA, the Trade Association for the Wireless Industry. Our members include wireless service providers, infrastructure providers, suppliers, and manufacturers. And we are here in opposition to this bill. As was mentioned, there is a process by which consumers have a number of ways in which they can get their products today repaired. Having legislation that mandates the giving away a number of different types of information that could be proprietary, could actually even have some legal ramifications, and also could be dangerous because of the security of devices. If all of a how-to book is given out there on how to work on every bit of electronics, there are dangers to something that could be working on a network, and also dangers to consumers' privacy of their information. I think this bill, both these bills have no assurance for the consumers. It just provides saying, give out this information, and that's that. There's a provision in there that talks about how the independent repairers, if they don't like the information that they've received from a manufacturer, that they have recourse. But there's no recourse in here for the consumer. And I think having authorized repair, people who know exactly what they're doing in order to repair an electronics, who've gone through training, who have gone through a knowledge base in order to to repair things sufficiently, safely, and securely is very important. Today, consumers can use independent repair if they choose to. They can use authorized repair. There are many opportunities already there, and this is really looking at an issue that is already being addressed by the marketplace and by consumer demand. Thank you.
Chair Chan, Chair Feeney, members of the committee, thank you so much for having me today. My name is Timothy Johnson with the Entertainment Software Association. ESA is the trade association representing companies that publish computer and video games for an assortment of consumer devices, including video game consoles. The three major console manufacturers, Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, are members of ESA. It is important to note at the onset that the three major video game console makers are committed to providing consumers with repairs that are quick, reliable, and safe. They offer a variety of options if a console needs to be repaired. Indeed, they all offer repair services beyond the warranty period to ensure that their consoles remain in good working order, because their respective platform's success depends on providing a reliable, versatile, and engaging platform on which to play video games and to enjoy the digital content. We believe that a right to repair mandate would cause severe harm to the video game industry because of the risk it would pose to game publishers that rely upon the secure media environment of the game console to safeguard their works against sophisticated content theft, also known as piracy. To help prevent piracy, video game software and hardware have security features built into them known as technological protection measures, TPMs. Digital locks also, to prevent the play of unauthorized video game content. Briefly, the video game console's firmware runs a verification check on the video game to confirm that it is a legitimate copy. If it is, the console will play the game. If not, the console will not play the game. The firmware itself is also encrypted to discourage unauthorized modifications of the system. These access controls protect not only the integrity of the console's firmware, but also the video games that run on the consoles. These digital locks help to create, again, a secure media platform, granting independent repair shops not authorized by video game console manufacturers the tools and know-how to modify the firmware exposes the console's security features to potential tampering, including disabling or removing the digital locks. We believe that sharing sensitive diagnostic information, tools, and security-related reset codes with unvetted third parties would compromise the security of the entire platform and harm both console makers and game publishers. Once a console is modified to disable its digital locks, any number of illegally copied games could be played on it. Recognizing that digital locks are entirely necessary and directly related to combating piracy, the U.S. Copyright Office, the leading authority in the country on copyright matters, said as recently as October 2018, that there is no evidence to support the conclusion of consoles under a general right to repair rule. It is also important to note that in this context, the DMCA makes it illegal to traffic in tools that can pick the digital locks. So any state effort to somehow make unlocking tools available to independent repair shops in order to fix consoles would be at odds with federal law. In closing, the viability and success of the video game console business is dependent upon a trustworthy and secure platform. If that platform is compromised, which we think it might be if right to repair is enacted, thus forcing console makers to open up their firmware, it could hurt game publishers and console makers. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Senator Feeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the panel for testifying today. I appreciate your testimony on this. Just a couple of things I made note of when you were talking about, I think you had mentioned it originally in the beginning part of the testimony. Many of your members of the association, each of the associations, I believe, mentioned authorized repair, certified repair. Those are currently independent shops. They're just certified through the manufacturer?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So how it works is, as I had said, the 19,000 repair options in America that are available, 80% are independent affiliated, which means that they have certified with the brand to go through their process and to fully understand all the systems that go into the different products that those OEMs and those brands manufacture. So that other, 20% and some change are actual in-network or in-house repairs. So brands like Sub-Zero or Miele, for example, would have their own network. So there is a mix of two, but in large, 80% are independent yet affiliated.
Okay. And with those certified repair shops or authorized repair personnel, what do they get differently than, say, if Senator Feeney if I signed, had Paul's repair shop, what would I not have access to that a certified repair person would?
Well, certainly, and let me, if I could just refer back to that list that I was going through as I beeped out. I was like, I just hid my notes on myself. So the certifications are important, and a lot of it has to do with safety. So first and foremost, any state certifications to handle products that are using electricity and gas. EPA, there's a 608, it's a regulation certification to handle refrigerant gases. And what I was saying is right now, the industry, any product that has refrigerant gases in this very large transition away from those high global warming potential gases into lower global warming gases. And so if you're not trained and certified to understand which gas, because there's a lot of different types of gases go into which product, you have a combustible event opportunity that could happen if there was an improper repair done there. Background checks, and then certainly any local service or company requirements would be required.
So if I had an independent shop, that's what I would produce to the manufacturer, to the company, to say, these are my certifications. But then on the other side, what would I get in return for that? So would I have to sign an exclusivity contract where I only work on that particular manufacturer? Do I have, kind of broad base, can I work with other manufacturers?
Mm-hmm. Yes, you
Would
can.
you give me tools and parts that the public doesn't have?
You certainly have access to different updates, to different, schematics that would be very inherent to whatever that product is, specific to that product, right? And so the parts issue is a little bit different because there is a pretty broad availability of parts currently on the market. A lot of my members will tell me, and I would have to admit this is anecdotal, so we'll take it for what it is, but a lot of the parts, and again, I'll just harken back to the refrigerant gases, for example, a lot of parts that would have a safety imperative to it or could cause some type of event in the home, again, for safety, would not be made publicly available.
Okay. And I just have two more, Mr. Chairman, if I could quickly. I'm starting to, I guess as we look at the bill and kind of look at the details and receive testimony, of which we've received a lot as a committee over the last few months, through email and things like that. There is a difference, right, between an HVAC component, say a furnace in somebody's home, and their toothbrush, as
Sure.
you brought up, or a
Sure.
coffee maker, right? I mean, I would think that there'd be less of a safety component if somebody wants to repair, their coffee maker in their home, correct?
Certainly, and I'm going to guess that not a whole lot of folks call out for coffee maker repair in their home, but I would say it's a refrigerator, a washer, dryer, dishwasher, some of the larger appliances in the home. A lot of these appliances are certified to organizations like UL, CSA, ASHRAE, and the like, which have safety standards that are recognized, for example, by the Consumer Product Safety Commission. And these are safety standards that, again, ensure the safe operation and the integrity of that product. And I often use the latch on your washer as an example. And so there's a safety latch that clicks into function when that washing machine is in that high spin part of the washing process. And if you are not properly trained and certified as a technician, so again, affiliated to that brand, you may not know that that's a safety standard and you're performing a repair and you can trip that because it is wired into the firmware of that product. And so we're talking about very serious issues at play. If you have children in the home, children are fascinated by lifting that lid and watching that washer go round and round and round, right? And you don't want that child to be able to manipulate that product at that time. And so these are real considerations that we take very seriously, sir.
Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate the clarification. Sure. And then one other thing that jumped out at me in speaking about the video game consoles, and I'm very sensitive to proprietary information. We've talked a lot in this committee about patent trolls and all sorts of, trade secrets. There are two sections of this bill that I wanted to read through again when you were testifying, saying that nothing in this chapter shall be construed to require a manufacturer to divulge a trade secret. And then it looks like the next section as well. It's strictly access to diagnostic and repair information. So is that something that if we were to kind of work through another iteration of this bill, is that sufficient to address the issues that you were talking about on trade secrets, or is this something that we should be adding to it? Or
in working on this issue for the past couple of years and working in a number of different states on this bill and bills like this, I'm just unsure how you would amend a bill to take that into account. For us, for consoles, when we discuss the firmware, it is so interconnected inside the device, the firmware, the technological protection measures, authorizing legal games, not playing illegal games. All those are so connected. I don't know how one would be able to separate that out technologically, and I don't know how you would necessarily do that in this bill. Just anecdotally, I'm unsure how you would amend it to get it to work.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Dom.
Thank you. How one becomes an authorized repair person, if there's a fee involved, education, schooling, that kind of thing.
I can't say specifically. I mean, it's going to be a brand by brand determination, but there is certainly a process that is gone through, and I would just have to follow up with you on that. I don't have that specific information in front of me.
I would appreciate if you could
Sure.
follow up.
Yep.
You had mentioned that it was 80% of the 19,000, which are about 15,200 people, are independent. And you also talked a little bit earlier, and I may be conflating the two, that one of the advantages of the current system was that the companies sort of do security checks on the repair people before they come into people's homes to repair. Do the companies check the 15,200 authorized repair people as well?
So the overall, the OEM or the brand wouldn't be the one doing the check. It would be that independent business that wishes to affiliate. So the requirements would be background checks, certifications that the OEM or the brand would require.
So each of the 15,200 authorized repair people in the country have gone through some kind of security check before they go into people's homes?
That's what our members have told us, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative LaBeouf.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So actually, I just want to draw your attention to Section 3 of the bill, which discusses about essentially the diagnostic repair, about not having to continually pay for a subscription service. I'm not as familiar with the specific industries that you represent, but I know in other industries that aren't covered in this bill, that has been the largest complaint from the independent repair shops, is that they're almost the manufacturers can raise the prices or maintain that subscription in a way that essentially is an unburdensome cost of doing business. And I think this gets a little bit to also what Representative Dohm was touching upon. But can you maybe talk about, in your industry specific, what is that contractual relationship that these authorized dealers have with your particular products that you represent? It could go to anyone.
As a trade association, I don't know what the specific requirements are that every manufacturer would have with their authorized repair.
Do you have an example of, for example, AT&T? If I was to be an authorized AT&T repair person, would I have to be paying a certain annual subscription service to be able to repair those cell phones?
I don't know the answer, I'm sorry.
Okay.
If you could track down the answer for the representative, that'd be helpful.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Any other members? All right, I got one. Mr. Johnson, because we're going to try to stay with gaming devices for the sake of ease. Obviously, I think most of us here are either familiar or played with a video game device, and I do understand what you talk about, trade secrets, proprietary information regarding electronics and the firmware. I suppose the question is, as part of, let's say, building a PS3 or PS4, does every device in the system, for example, the fan, right, that keeps it cool, that is not a proprietary piece of equipment for Sony? That's something they buy from a third party? Or is that part of the entire proprietary information inside the PlayStation?
I understand your question, and I am unable to answer it. I am not sure. I don't know how technically those consoles are made down to the specific part level. They might have had a fan specifically designed for the wattage and the size of that console and for the memory hard drive within there. There might be a smaller fan for a smaller, older system. I'm just unsure. I can certainly find that out for you. It may or may not be proprietary. I'm just unable to answer that right now for you.
Thank you. Get the information for us, because what I'm trying to get at is that the device in itself, while I do understand certain trade secrets in there, but it's obviously not 100%, well, maybe it could be, largely custom made in it. For example, same thing, the washer, dryer example, not two washer dryers are created identically. There has to be some parts they have to pay for to a third-party group to get a license to use inside their products, and some obviously are a patent still valid and some are patent expired. So that's what kind of my curious question is, because the device in itself is not solely made of one part that the manufacturer creates. Anyone wants to chime in?
And I think how we would answer that is that we are looking at it in the context of the electronic components and how the firmware and the software interact with the other parts of the appliance. And so that would be the key determinant. And it's possible that not all parts are intricately interwoven with the firmware and the software. If they are, then I think the question is that yes, it has some bearing, but certainly I think going on a little bit of what Mr. Johnson was saying is, all of our manufacturers, my members' manufacturers work with suppliers, and so they have their supplier networks who they have contracted with to make sure that they're putting that product and manufacturing that product to the best of its operability. And so I think it's just a question. I think it would be product by product, and frankly for us.
Thank you for your time. We could provide that information to the committee
Sure,
down the road. Appreciate it. Anyone else? There being none, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Next on my list is Robin Engenthorn from Good Point Recycling of Brockton. Did you push the button? Push the button.
Okay. Used to work at Massachusetts DEP, last testified here about 22 years ago. I moved to Vermont, started a company doing repair and reuse of electronics. I've opened a new plant in Brockton, Massachusetts. We've got about 30 employees. I wanted to provide some history on the context of this. The industry arguments you just heard versus the right to repair are pretty much the same ones that I studied in high school that were made against the Mag-Moss Warranty Act of 1975. People were concerned about warranties, and the manufacturers were saying, if you get into this, there's so much legal mumbo-jumbo, you'll never get out of it. The government cannot police this thing. But Magnuson-Moss Act never did take the FTC into the weeds because it mostly works as the brakes on the OEM attorneys. Once you pass a law about warranties, their attorneys will stop the creativity and say, whoa, that could get us in trouble. And that's the way we have to look at the right to repair. It's insurance against the future. I'm not that concerned about the testimony that I've heard from either the manufacturers or do-it-yourself repair people. I'm worried about what's going to be possible to do in planned obsolescence 5 years from now. It is going to be possible to make my employees, when they take a power cord that still works and sell it online for somebody that's missing a power cord, it will be possible to make power cords individually work on individual computers so that it would absolutely kill the repair market. And finally, I just want to say that if the bill is seen as being future insurance, like the Warranty Act, against things that might occur in the future, that if you look the way the FTC manages warranty claims, it's almost all done by mediation. They never get into these lawsuits that everybody's telling you are going to happen. And these bills should be seen as putting the brakes. If I'm wrong, and the other proponents of the right to repair are wrong, manufacturers can always lease the device. I can't define planned obsolescence, but I know it when I see it. And that's what we have to give the FTC and regulators in the Commerce Department as a tool for what might happen in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? There being none, thank you very much for your time. Mr. Henry Baker, owner of a repair shop.
Now I'm live. Good afternoon. My name's Henry Baker. I own a repair store. It's an iPhone repair store on Main Street in Walpole. I've been in business now for 3 years. Over those 3 years, I've probably had at least 1,500 customers. And last December, or December 2017, about closing time, I had a family come in with some iPhone 7s that needed charge port replacements. The phones were children's phones that were damaged by just a bad charge cord they got from a gas station. They came in at almost closing time, so I wasn't able to do it then, but I held the phones to return to them, a couple of days later. So after we closed up, I got the bright idea, and I took that phone to the Apple store down the street, and I asked them to repair the charge cord connection that was on the phone. And Apple told me the phone was dead. They don't fix the charge cords because the charge cord is a cord that is directly attached to the motherboard and it cannot be separated. So the $700 phone was no good. This is a repair that I routinely do every day. I charge $60 and I get it done in an hour. I saw a YouTube video earlier, maybe a couple of days before. I think it was Louis Rossmann out of New York who posts a lot of these videos, saying that Apple doesn't repair these things and they declare the phone's dead. I didn't believe that, so I had a phone, I had an opportunity, and I wanted to see what my customers were experiencing or what they could experience at Apple. Routinely, I also see phones on a regular basis. Now, the interesting thing is, when I was at the Apple store, I did make a point of meeting, went through several people. I got to a person who was the manager, and it was the manager who told me the phone could not be repaired. So it was somebody that had some relevance in the store. Also, I routinely see customers who will come in with phones, and when I see a phone where the water indicators are red, or if I see signs of staining on panels in the phone, typically Apple phones, where there's a little bit of staining, they have these bright panels that cover the electronics connectors. So if any water gets in there, you're going to see a stain on it. So I routinely ask them, did you go to Apple with this? And they'll tell me they did. And I say, why are you here? And they say, well, Apple told me my phone was dead and they wouldn't repair it because simply there were signs that water got in the phone. But the phone is fully operational. But this is, once again, something we do check that phone out to make sure it will work before we go to do a repair on it, but routinely these phones work. So I guess all I'm saying is there is a need for repair, and we fulfill that need, okay? And there is a situation where rather large companies, who I hold in considerable esteem and really like a lot, still they have practices that are a little unusual. I would just never would think of telling my people to tell people that this device you paid $700 for can't be fixed when it can be easily fixed. Routinely, that person's being told they got to buy another phone. It isn't so bad with Apple. They usually have a replacement program. So usually when they tell you that, they'll tell you they'll replace it. They'll give you a replacement phone, which is a used phone. And you have to give them your phone and $300, and they'll give you a replacement phone. So that repair that runs for $50 or $60, Apple effectively has made that a $300 proposition. So once again, the guys who are doing repairs on the street are adding, they're giving considerable value to the public, and they are protecting the public from corporations that sometimes just aren't looking out for their customers. Okay, so that's my statement. We go with it?
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions?
Thank
Representative
you.
Senator Feeney has a question for you. Hold on.
Sure. 1 second. Thank you, Mr. Baker, for coming in. You said your shop's in Walpole?
Yeah, it is, and I recognize you.
We should have carpooled here today.
Yeah.
How long have you been in business, did you say?
I've been in business on Main Street for 3 years, doing the cell phone repair.
Okay. And strictly cell phones you do? The small electronics?
Yeah, it's pretty, well, cell phones and iPads.
Okay. So I appreciated your story about, going to the Apple Store just to see how it went through. We know, I think, and we're hearing a lot of testimony today about how this bill would benefit consumers. If this was codified into Massachusetts law, how would it affect you as an independent shop? What could you do if we do adopt this bill that you can't do currently, or would it just would it bring more customers in, or is this strictly consumer driven in your mind?
The real issue is that Apple, over the years, with the 6S, they introduced a trick where if you, when you did a repair on that phone, they did something where I believe if you broke the home button, the next installation of the operating system would brick the phone. So effectively, they turned the phone into a brick. You just lost $650 because you brought it to another store, they did the repair, and in the software, they recognized the fact that there was a foreign device on there. They turned the phone into nothing, but the fact is that attempt to shut down the repair business was ended very quickly because a lot of lawyers have cell phones, and they were hit with so many class action suits, and so many suits came at them. The next release of the operating system opened those phones up again. So, the need for repair is very much needed on the cell phone side, because it's very easy for them through software to identify parts. Most of these parts do have IMEI numbers. They do have ways of trapping where eventually they'll shut it down and put us all out of business, and it won't take much. And at that point, the consumer loses out, because now all of a sudden, nothing will be repairable, or at least they could go to that point. Right now, they do repair glass, but from my understanding, the podcast that I've seen, I don't know this for certain, but I think you can see it on, some of the podcasts that are out there. iPad Rehab out of New York recently has interviewed a number of people coming to them, and these people are saying that they've gone to Apple authorized stores, and Apple authorized stores are not authorized to do any repairs. So they've got this tag out, they're authorized, but they don't allow them to do repairs.
Interesting. Okay. And one more question. You see people that come into your store, their phone is bricked, or maybe there's something that you can't repair. I don't know what the percentage is on, people that come into your store that there's nothing you can do anything for. So number one, are there a lot of, cases where they're bringing in their phone and you just can't repair it? Number two.
Okay. So anyways, if I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. You can answer that part, and I just have
If they bring, now we're getting down to business practices, but the bottom line is we are very susceptible to the market in general without any laws whatsoever. Yeah. Because the one issue is we've got Yelp out there, we've got Google My Business out there, we've got all these reporting sites. The minute I screw up, somebody's on that site saying I was a bad guy. Right. Whenever I get dinged, generally speaking, it's just a character who doesn't want to pay for something, but generally speaking, I have to deal with it. I either have to get back to him, try to work it out, or do something there. So, let's get rid of that guy. So on my side and on our side, if we mess up and we have a healthy phone, that gets damaged, I just buy the phone off them. And if we have a situation, generally speaking, also, I only do a certain number of repairs. 90% of my business is screen replacements. Okay. Another 5% might be charge ports. Another 2% might be home buttons, No, so it's a very limited thing. I'm not into micro soldering, although I might get into that.
That's fine. No, I understand, and trust me, if you weren't good at the job, then you wouldn't be able to be in business. I think.
And I turn people away, and I do. Like, let's say a phone came in the other day. Right. It was absolutely crushed. Yeah. It was a traffic coordinator, a woman in the street in front of a school, drops a phone in the street, didn't realize it. Then she sees the phone's been there. It's been run over 5 times. Yeah. It looked like it was ground into the dirt. She brings it into me. I said, let's check it out. Take the screen off, pop a new screen on, comes right up. Everything's working fine. Yeah. But normally what we do is throw a screen on it. First of all, we do some diagnostics, and if it doesn't look like it's going to take the screen, then we just stop the whole thing, give it to them, give them their money back.
All right, so I don't want to take up all the time for my committee members here.
Just because he's a constituent.
No, I understand you.
Silly business practice.
Yeah, no. My question is, my last question If somebody does come in and they have you're not a magician, you're a repair tech, and they come in with something that's crushed or a phone that just is no longer operable, what do they generally do with that? Do you take that and recycle it for them? Do they throw it in the trash? Do they keep it around? I'm just trying to think downstream kind of what people are doing
I
with their
point them to
electronics.
eBay, and I tell them, because sometimes I had a guy in yesterday with 4 or 5 phones he was trying to sell me. I just told him, go to eBay. You can sell them. Broken X's are worth $150 for the parts. Broken 7s, you can get $50 for them. Sometimes with Apple, you can go to Apple and you can, if the screen's not crushed, you can go to Apple and get some money on a when you go to buy a new phone. So they still have value. I don't trade in phones. I don't buy phones. I don't buy parts. I buy my parts from the parts distributors, and that's it. I don't want to be taking parts out of dead phones. I don't know what the parts went through. The parts are cheap enough.
Right. All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions?
Thank you.
There being none. As you can tell, the chair gives some flexibility regarding the time limit. But just let people know, look at us, because I'm going to start doing this a little bit once you hit time limit to let people know you should try to wrap up. My polite way of doing this as opposed to just gabbling you. Next up is Adam Fullerton from Boston Microsoldering.
Told to turn my mic on before I came up. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, ranking members and co-chairs. My name is Adam Fullerton. I was born in Holyoke, grew up in Sudbury, and I've been professionally repairing small electronics in Boston for the last 13 years. Currently, I'm the operations manager for Cell Phone Repair Boston. We own and operate the 2 largest walk-in repair shops in Boston. Earlier this summer, I also started a project called Boston Microsoldering, where we drive around the state. We'll pick up and purchase either defective, water-damaged electronics. We will document and record the repairing of these devices with the goal of educating both hobbyists and small businesses to repair devices that otherwise might be beyond their current capability. We then sell these refurbished devices to pay for the video equipment and more educational content. So I'm actually not really here today to talk about my professional experience. I'm here to talk about my mother-in-law, strangely enough. So I met my wife's family earlier this year. My mother-in-law had just gotten off of a long vacation. It was her first time to Taiwan. She then came to Boston for the first time. She met her granddaughter for the first time. She had a wonderful summer, save for her experience with the manufacturer of her phone. So during one of her trips, her cell phone, an iPhone 6, had unfortunately taken a dunk in the ocean, saltwater damaged, and she did what most consumers do. They go to the manufacturer, the first service point, the most obvious service point, to try to get this device repaired. She had taken hundreds, if not thousands, of photos while she was in Taiwan. This is expensive trip she spent thousands of dollars on. She had just met her granddaughter and taken hundreds more pictures of my daughter. And after getting a little bit of water on her phone, it was inoperable. So she initially actually went to an Apple store in Shanghai, China, then to the Apple store on Boylston Street, a mile from here in Boston, and was promptly told by sales reps and managers that her device was dead and could not be repaired. Strangely enough, the device was still charging. You could plug it in, you could hear the charging indicator blip, but there was nothing on the display. Now, she was given essentially one option at both Apple stores that she visited. Your device cannot be repaired. You can pay $299 for a replacement. Replacement of a device which in 2019 is worth less than $200. But my mother-in-law really wasn't interested in replacing a several-year-old device. She could buy a new one. Obviously, Apple wanted to sell her an iPhone 8, an iPhone 10, but she needed her data. She wanted pictures of my one-day-old daughter. She wanted her vacation photos. Thankfully for her, she did not take no as an answer. She brought the phone to me. A little bit more experience in these matters. And long story short, we were able to repair that device with a $5 chip that controlled touch, a $10 chip that supplied power to the screen. That got the device to power on with a poorly working screen. We then paid $14 more to purchase another screen. So I was able to get the parts in this case, but not from Apple. You know, going to Apple, we can't purchase the board level components that allow us to do data recovery, whether it's for the customers that I've dealt with for the last decade or even members of my own family. And even if we are able to get these components, they come from overseas. I had to purchase 2 parts, one from Hong Kong, one from Shenzhen, China, wait a couple weeks for them to come in so that I could fix my mother-in-law's phone in my kitchen. And beyond that, it would have been impossible to do these repairs if not for documentation that leaked on the internet. I cannot go to Apple and request a wiring diagram, request a schematic. And again, I wasn't looking for source code, for firmware, for cryptographic keys. I needed a map of the motherboard to know where the power supply goes, to figure out if there's a blown fuse and replace it. And only because somebody in Apple's supply chain leaked this information on the internet, manufacturer refused to provide it, we were able to repair it, and thankfully we got her photos back. But if the manufacturers had their way, all of this information that's required for repair would be considered proprietary, and it would be impossible to recover data off of phones like this. Thank you very much for your time. And also, Chair Chan, if the ESA is unable to answer questions about their own industry, I would be happy to answer any for you.
Thank you for the offer. Any questions from members of the committee? There being none, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
As is customary with all committees, since we have a lot of things going on, we do take legislators at a turn. I see Senator Brady is here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'll be brief. I do have some letters to save time and support. So I'm here to speak in favor of Senate 107. I've been asked to file this and support this. A lot of my constituents have called and supported this in my business community as well. This is relative to the digital right to repair. This bill will expand consumer choices in a current non-competitive market and subsequently save both the consumer and with time and money in digital electronic products. We did remove the medical part of this because public safety is of the utmost importance. But this right to repair legislation reduces costs of repairs for end users by creating more competition in the marketplace and eliminates long waiting periods. And of course, I'm not technologically astute, so I just had to purchase a new phone because my other phone broke, and it would have taken me months on end to send it to a manufacturer and get it back and be repaired. So I had to break down and spend some good hard-earned money to buy a new phone. But I'm learning how to use it too because I'm not technologically astute. But I do just ask you to support this. And as I mentioned, for safety concerns, this bill does not apply to medical equipment.
Thank you, Senator. And if your phone is still broken, there's about 200 people in the room I think that can probably help you out, including the one right behind you.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of young people that have much more technological information than I do, so.
Thank you, Senator. I just want to thank you for bringing this to my attention, for being a champion in the bill, and I know we've discussed this over the last couple of months in preparation for the hearing, so thank you for filing it and for having the discussion with me and my colleagues on it. Means a lot.
Thank you, Senator, for your testimony. Any questions? Representative McKenna.
Yeah, real briefly, Senator, you mentioned not applicable to medical equipment. I know that there had been 3 standards of certification, and there was some previous editions that had some exemptions, but not all. Does this version have all medical equipment exempt?
Yeah, and obviously, because that's a whole public safety concern, that was taken out of the bill. Thank you. And I'm in the middle of a public service hearing as well. I'm chairing, so I snuck out. But if anybody needs to contact me, my office is always open.
We can keep you here longer if you don't want to go back.
I've got to go back. There's important retirement legislation we're working on.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you to the committee for your time.
Next up is Valentin, I'm going to murder this name, Verustoraru from Boston Mobile iPhone Repairs. Well, you don't have to bring your sign, but that's okay.
Just put it right here. All right. Hi, good afternoon. Mic is on. Never been here before. Moved to the U.S. about 12 years ago. I am from Romania originally. I moved to Italy, I lived in Italy, and now I'm in Boston. Boston is a great city. I like it. So I've set up family here, and now I'm a U.S. citizen, so I'm trying to help others in understanding how, this works. So I've opened my business about 6 years ago, started it very small, and we're trying to help people mostly to make sure that what we're doing gets them happy out the door very fast. We're not trying to steal any software. We're not trying to steal any technology. We're not interested in that. We're interested in helping our community, which is in Somerville and around Somerville and Boston as well, to get their devices up and running. If you have a broken screen, I can fix that in about 15, 20 minutes. If you have a broken charging port, we can fix that too. We have seen in the past 3 to 4 years that in this industry that we're in, Apple mostly is trying to manipulate through software parts of the phone that they don't need any kind of software to run properly, even if the parts are brought in China, refurbished, reused from a different phone. So we've seen a lot of this. Maybe not all of you are technologically advanced, but in order to change a screen, you don't need software to pair it. But Apple came up with the solution, and they said, if you're not using our software to pair the screen, we're not going to give you full access onto the screen. Lighting, for example, the light will be maybe dimmer or a different color, and they're controlling that through software. I'm just trying to fix your screen so you can go and come here and do your job, and I'm trying to support my family and my community. That's what we're doing. We don't want to steal any property, any intelligence. If you have a console that you want to work and play on it, and your charging port it's broken, you don't need software to fix that. You can micro-soldering or solder another port on it, and your console is up and running. If you have to send it out, it would take 3 weeks for you to get your console back. And I know how much you love gaming, therefore I want to fix it fast for you so you're back and running. That's what we're doing. We're trying to help community, and we're trying to make good to people. We're not trying to take anything from anybody away.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? There being none, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next up is Jessa Jones from iPad Rehab Microsoldering. Jessa Jones? Oh, there you are.
All right, how does this work? Let me try to fix it. Okay, there, fixed. Have you tried turning it off and on? The old classic. I'm Jessa Jones. I'm here from Rochester, New York. I flew here just to come and talk to you guys today. I was a stay-at-home mom, and then I started fixing broken Apple devices primarily, and other devices as well. I've now trained 7 other stay-at-home moms and 1 stay-at-home dad to also fix these devices. We've fixed over 30,000 devices. Less than 5% would have been considered repairable by authorized repair. So I wrote down some things so that I don't waste my time here. Recently, I became Apple certified. So I am Apple certified. You can see it right here. Now, this is largely meaningless. In fact, it tells you right on the back of the letter, what can you do? It says benefits of being Apple certified technician, Apple certification website. This site gives you online access to your certificate. And that's it. And that's pretty much true, because there really isn't, like you've heard from these guys, bona fide practical options for authorized repair, at least not for Apple devices and Samsung devices like I'm familiar with. So that leaves this gap here where if you, say, have an iPad crack a screen. There is no authorized repair whatsoever for anything that you can do to break your iPad, period. No service whatsoever. What if you, like these guys, lose your, drop a phone in the toilet, now you've lost your memories, there's no authorized repair for data recovery. And then even things like a really classic problem, iPhone 7 epidemic failure of audio IC. Apple will, if you go there, they will tell you that it is a made-up thing they've never heard of before, even though we know that their internal in-house support ranks that as the #1 problem that they're hearing calls about. So we have this long history of being misled by manufacturers. And what I wanted to talk to you, one thing I'm kind of afraid about is that the new independent repair parts provider program from Apple is sort of this hand-waving, yeah, so now we're doing right to repair, so we'll go away, unnecessary. That is not good enough. In fact, that program is quite anti-repair. So for example, iPhone 6s. If I want to go buy an iPhone 6s, it's going to cost me about $200 if I get it used on swappa.com, which is a pretty good place to get phones. If I drop that phone and I crack the screen, then the Apple certified price for that screen is $160, and the Apple certified repair price is $169. So the independent repair provider program is economically not feasible, and so it's going to be just like authorized repair, which is we don't really fix anything, we tell you everything's not repairable, and we want you to go buy a new phone. Now that sets the stage, though, for what I'm really afraid of, which is the same stuff that these guys have mentioned to you earlier today, software locks. It is true, when I heard Robin say, these guys could make it so that you can't plug in a power button, it's coded to the device. We're seeing precedent for that. Right now, as we sit here today, iOS 13 was released, and it now, if you switch the battery, will tell you this battery was put here by Apple, and it will take away function. It will take away your battery health information. If you change your screen, you'll lose True Tone, you'll lose ambient light sensor function. If you lose your home button, you could lose your whole device because you can't press home to update, and there goes your data. So we're seeing precedent for this software lockdown. You asked, what could I do differently if this bill was passed? And for me, assuming it trickles over to New York, which I think it would, I would be able to fix more stuff. My Keurig, my Roomba, things that I would like to fix is, I would teach kids to fix. I've trained 500 people to learn how to micro solder. I love fixing. People love repair, and practical repair is such a great thing that users don't have an option to do practical repair from authorized sources. So we need bills like this. We need your support to help enable users to have the choice to roll back their software to a version that their device still supports. If you keep updating your phone, you're going to get a hardware-software mismatch, and then it doesn't work anymore. Well, how about this? Can I say, I understand there's a security risk? Give me the ability to consent. I understand I might blow myself up, fine. I understand that I may have a security risk if I want to go back and make my phone work again on the old operating system. We can't do those things. And I think the software locks are what I'm really afraid of, because we're seeing more and more and more of them coming out. That's all. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? There being none, thank you for your time and taking the time to come down.
You're welcome.
Representative Rogers is here. I didn't know you were so popular.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I get that a lot. Well, Chair Feeney, Chair Chan, thank you so much, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to testify on H 2018, introduced by my colleague Claire Cronin, and the Digital Right to Repair Bill. I'm sure you've heard from a lot of folks today, so I'll try not to go on too long. I have more lengthy testimony that I will submit for the record, and I'll just try to summarize the key points as I see them. H 2018 is about updating a core right of property for the digital age. That right is, of course, the long recognized right of owners to tinker with, disassemble, service, repair, and maintain their own property. This right has been recognized in U.S. and British law for centuries. In short, once you've sold a thing, you no longer control it. Sure, you can protect your trade secrets or other intellectual property rights, patents, but you don't control the device. Instead, it's the new owner's property to do with as he or she sees fit. These two bills also the one introduced in the Senate, recognize that basic consumer and property right and update it for the digital age. Manufacturers make a wide variety of arguments against repair, from security, trade secrets, marketing. But simply put, digital right to repair laws don't require manufacturers to make repairable devices. What it says is if you do make a repairable device and supply your own staff with schematics and diagnostic software and the like, you have to make those available to the device owner and their agent as well. As such, digital right to repair isn't just about empowering owners, it's also about supporting small neighborhood repair shops that might support a family, while keeping repair costs lower and more convenient for literally millions of consumers. Right to repair is pro-consumer, pro-environment reform. It's designed to prolong the useful life of devices. The last 40 years has seen a steady erosion of repair. Manufacturers have stopped providing tools, parts, and information that used to come standard with new products like TVs, home appliances, vehicles. This throwaway culture is very expensive for consumers and very, very expensive for the planet, as toxic e-waste is now the single fastest growing type of waste. Finally, in this time of increasing wealth inequality and concentrations of market power by large technology firms, a digital right to repair ensures that the spoils of the coming Internet of Things are distributed throughout the economy. Let me ask, should Massachusetts give any company a green light to create a multi-billion-dollar aftermarket service and parts monopoly? Or doesn't it make more sense for the Bay State to allow residents to make a business of servicing these products for other Bay State residents? Technicians in this state making a good salary doing logic board repairs on various devices, or we can grant essentially a monopoly. So, I really appreciate your time. I thank you for your consideration. I know you're going to hear lots of arguments on this, and it's a challenging issue for the committee, but I hope this bill will get a favorable report. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions? There being none, thank you for your time. We've been joined by Representative Madaro at the end over here on my left. Next up is Daniel Carlson from Schmidt Equipment.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, distinguished members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to testify. My name is Daniel Carson, and I represent Schmidt Equipment Incorporated. Our dealership represents John Deere construction equipment, along with product lines such as Hitachi and Wirtgen. Road building equipment. We have 5 locations in Massachusetts. We strive to bring our customers value in all we do. To do so, we spend significant capital each and every year to ensure our technicians have the latest safety and technology training. While John Deere equipment has become more sophisticated, Deere supports the customer's right to repair and has built an advanced diagnostic capability into its equipment that are available to the owner, dealers, or others. And for those customers who require even greater diagnostic capabilities, John Deere provides subscription access to Customer Service Advisor, a special diagnostic tool similar to the tools we use to support our customers. Customers should be able to expect the same level of information across all manufacturing brands. It is an appropriate solution that makes so-called right-to-repair legislation unnecessary. That is why manufacturers of tractors and combines, such as John Deere, have made an industry commitment to make available by model year 2021 the tools customers need to navigate onboard technology. In the near future, end users will have access to onboard diagnostics tools via in-cab display, wireless interface, electronic diagnostic service tools, and training on how to use both. Manufacturers and dealers will also make available manuals, product guides, and product service information. However, to the extent that the owner has the right to lawfully repair his or her equipment, John Deere recommends against unauthorized modification of the embedded software code. Providing access to the source code would not only undermine the manufacturer's innovation and intellectual property rights, it would also risk data privacy and allow unauthorized and illegal tampering of safety and emissions requirements for the equipment. Modifications also create unknown liability issues for the individuals. Modifying the code, dealers who subsequently trade in modified equipment for resale, as well as subsequent owners of modified equipment. Modified software on heavy-duty equipment can create an unsafe environment for those operating the equipment, bystanders near the equipment, or those repairing the equipment. I've made my statements available to the committee here, and I'll end my testimony there.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Senator Feeney.
Thank you, Chairman Chan, and thank you for your testimony. I appreciate you being here today. So just for clarification purposes, you had mentioned that there's a commitment from, say, John Deere, I think it was the manufacturer you're talking about, to make available to the consumers diagnostics, manuals, product guides. What purpose does that serve to somebody who owns a John Deere piece of equipment if they can see that there's a problem, they have a guide, and they can tell that there's a code, but that they can't actually do anything with it unless they go to a John Deere authorized repair shop, correct? So what purpose would that serve to give a consumer that information?
I'll give you the best answer, and any information that I don't touch on, I'll make sure we'll get you a proper reply. But in the essence of the construction trade, as you know, uptime, being able to work is critical when you've bid a project and you have to come in under and try to actually make a profit on that job, right? So what you do by providing the tools, as John Deere does, as Caterpillar does, as Komatsu does, as Volvo does, is to ensure that there is a certain level of serviceability that can be handled at the owner or the customer's beck and call, if you will. The more technical stuff, yes, it does require us to go to that next level. But as an industry, we share a lot of information to make sure, because uptime and owning and operating costs are critical to these machines that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars for jobs that are millions of dollars to complete on time. So that'd be my answer.
I guess my concern in speaking about downtime, I mean, this is Massachusetts, right? In my district, I have, kind of one part of the district that's pretty rural, and I don't know that...
You need to provide more funding for road work there, Senator.
I agree with that. But my concern is that, if I have a farm in the southern part of my district and they have John Deere equipment, that they don't have access to, a John Deere dealership or a place where they can get to quickly, whereas the rest of their equipment, they can take to the small engine repair shop down the street. They can take to their independent auto. Some of them have mechanics on site, depending on the size of the farm. And my concern is that though they can fix all the rest of their equipment and their truck, because we have a right to repair auto law in Massachusetts, they can't then take this equipment that they've spent a lot of money on and get that repaired, to their independent repair shop nearby, that they actually have to, travel long distances or, somewhere else. So I guess my concern, exactly like you said, is downtime. And one of the things that these, proponents, the farming proponents at least, have brought to me is, look, we have independent repair shops that work on all the rest of our equipment. We would like the same for, for this equipment. So,
sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? There being none, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is David Dimmaduk, PhD, Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Air Force, retired. Lieutenant Colonel, come on up. Welcome.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'll keep my remarks very brief. I support right to repair because I think it makes it better engineering. I spent a lot of time working with large military engineer. I did engineering all my life. My concern on the consumer front is even when products are serviced by the manufacturer by authorized agents, there isn't the information to actually do the repairs. Modern washing machines that happened recently to me, to other family members, they're out of warranty. They used my speakerphone to talk to the authorized repair shop. They said it was broken. If I had the data, I think I could have understood what was wrong with that sensor and fixed it. And I'd encourage even looking how to expand this law to make out of warranty engineering data available to keep from junking very expensive equipment. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next up, Paul Roberts from SecurePairs.org. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Feeney and Chan, Vice Chairs Welsh and Livingstone, and members of the Joint Committee. My name is Paul Roberts. I'm a resident in Belmont, Massachusetts, and a lifelong resident of the state. I'm the founder of SecureRepairs.org, which is a not-for-profit group of more than 150 cybersecurity experts who support the creation of new consumer protection laws enshrining a digital right to repair. I speak to you today to voice my support for Senate Bill 107 and House Bill 218, an act relative to the digital right to repair, and also to answer any questions you might have, particularly in regard to cybersecurity risk and the Internet of Things. Let me start by thanking all of you for scheduling today's hearing and for making time available for this important issue to have a proper airing. You've shown through your actions that you take the proposed digital right to repair legislation seriously and wish to hear all sides before making a decision. I thank you all for that and for the opportunity to speak today. I'd like to say that, you're hearing both arguments for and against the digital right to repair. At the risk of oversimplifying, I'd like to say that most of the arguments you're hearing against this are not substantive, and most of the arguments you're hearing for it are. I'm going to talk specifically just about the cybersecurity issues that have been raised by a number of the opponents of this bill, and the suggestion that should we grant a digital right to repair to owners and independent repair professionals, that somehow we're inviting some kind of cyber apocalypse in which connected devices are going to be vulnerable to hacking and data theft. I've been writing about cybersecurity for 17 years. I started covering cybersecurity as a journalist in 2002. And what I'll say is that the worst case scenario that the manufacturers and their representatives are warning you about is more or less already upon us. We already have a huge problem with insecure connected devices in our environment. As an example of this, I will point to the 2016 Mirai botnet attack that took out a New Hampshire company called Dyn, and by extension, Dyn's customers, who included Twitter, Amazon.com, and major retailers. That was a botnet that consisted of compromised webcams, digital video recorders, broadband routers, and a variety of other IoT devices. Now, note, we have a major botnet attack, and there have been many more since then, of Internet of Things devices, but we have no digital right to repair. That should suggest to you that any link between cybersecurity problems with the Internet of Things and digital right to repair are not substantive. We already have a problem. The source of that botnet, Mirai, was not cyber criminals reading schematics, and it was not cyber criminals using diagnostic software for webcams, DVRs, and the like. It was poor quality embedded software on devices that are already deployed out in homes, businesses, and other environments. The cyber criminals simply used default administrative passwords to hack into those devices, take control of them, and use them to launch an attack. So I would say to you that this is already a problem. And in essence, what OEMs are saying is that they want to keep their software protected from prying eyes. That's probably not surprising. A audit by the group, the Cyber Independent Test Lab, of some 6,000 firmware versions, software, so this is firmware as a device, the software that runs on embedded devices, going back 15 years from 2003 to 2018, found that during that time there was no improvement in the security of that embedded device software over 15 years. Security through obscurity is not a thing. Keeping the workings of software and devices secret does not keep them more secure. In fact, hackers, cyber criminals are very resourceful. They're also very determined. One of the many benefits of a digital right to repair, opening up the devices to maintenance and service from independent repair shops as well as owners, is to make them more accessible, understandable, and in some ways to hold OEMs and manufacturers to account for the quality of their software. So I thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, either about what I said or about what some of the other industry representatives said.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? There being none, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Ray, I'm going to mess this one up too, Faye from Repair Cafe Ambassador.
Thank you for allowing me to testify, Chairman Chan, Feeney, and members of the Joint Committee. My name is Ray Faye, and I live in Bolton, Massachusetts. I'm a retired software engineer, now a member of the Rotary Club of Neshoba Valley and Bolton Local, which is our town sustainability group. And I'm going to talk about a little different perspective. I grew up kind of tinkering with things all along. And then about 6 years ago, I started thinking about maybe helping other people to learn how to fix their things and get their things repaired rather than, throwing them away and buying new or getting frustrated with things. So we ended up in our town, we started an event, a repair event that we call Repair Cafe. And the original idea started about 10 years ago in the Netherlands. A woman named Martina Postma kind of got this idea and said, we're going to start holding events. And the way it works is we set up in a school and a bunch of volunteers come, and then we invite people, anybody who wants to come who has something they can carry in that's broken, and we try to help them fix it for free, so that they can keep using their things. We keep things out of the landfill, and we save them money. So as far as, we'll look at anything that comes in, but as far as the electronic side of things, we get all kinds of things. We get air conditioners, vacuum cleaners, computers, laptops, cell phones, fans, dehumidifiers. So we then try to help the guest fix it. And we end up with, of course, we don't know what we're going to get from one time to the next, but we typically end up with about a 75% success rate in terms of being able to repair things and have people be able to keep using them. When we started in September 2013, we were the second repair event in Massachusetts. The first one was out in Pittsfield in early 2013. And now, over the last several years, we've been helping other towns get started. So we're now up to 33 towns in Massachusetts that are running these repair events. And it could be ours, we run 3 times a year. Others run once a month or maybe just once a year. The key is you want to keep your volunteers happy, because if they stop coming and you don't have anybody to do the repairs. So that's why we've chosen to do it 3 times a year, and it seems to be working very well. There are worldwide now over 2,000 towns, groups that are running these repair events, so it's really catching on. So anyway, the reason that I support this bill is it will give our repair volunteers a chance to have more likelihood of being able to repair the different events. If we can get access to repair information, schematics, and so on, then that's going to help us help community members and people in the Commonwealth and throughout the world to keep using their items. Any questions?
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the membership? There being none, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Next up is Dottie Fulgentini from Omni Tech Sales.
Thank you, Chairs Chan, Feeney, and members of the committee. My name is Dottie Fulgenetti, and I live in Easton, neighbor to Walpole. Now I know where to go get my iPhones repaired too. I'm here to testify in favor of digital right to repair. For more than 20 years now, I've been working in the computer industry selling maintenance contracts to big data centers that have server, storage, and network equipment. And back in the day, the OEMs used to work with the independent providers because it was really about they were selling hardware and they really didn't want the maintenance. But what they realized is if they gave data centers or any kind of computer users the ability to extend the life cycle of their products, that meant they couldn't sell them hardware fast enough. So they started to clamp down on some of the regulations, making it harder for independent companies. They did set up some independent companies that they called VARs, value-added resellers, but they were essentially working for the OEMs and providing them money back in return. So the true independents were really struggling with that. If I remember, I had a customer that had an $800,000 server. The OEM wanted to charge them $100,000 a year to support that. The independent company I worked with could have done it for $50,000. And so what the OEM started doing then is saying they wouldn't give you the software updates unless you had a contract with them. So imagine on your computers that you use every day, if all of a sudden they said, well, we're going to give you, we're going to sell you that, but now to use it, you have to pay us more money, even though the guy down the street could repair it. So they really kind of hold you hostage with that. And I guess it's really all about the money. When they can't sell as much hardware as they like, they try to clamp down on it on the software end. What happens when all of this equipment is obsolete because you can't get anyone to service it? It goes into the landfills, and that's a real problem, as other people have stated. So I think that this is really very similar arguments for and against, the same way as the automotive right to repair bill was. And I have to say that, sometimes the opponents of this make it sound like rocket science and like the world's going to come to an end if we don't move forward with this. And the questions that you've all been asking are really great questions, and I thank you for your time in looking into this. So.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the members? There being none, thank you so much. Next up is Janner Dominguez from Massperg. Yeah, sure. Going down. Oh, Ryan, and also Ryan Powell. Okay.
Good afternoon, Chairman Chan and Feeney, members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Janet Dominitz. I'm the director of Massperg, a statewide citizen-based advocacy organization. We represent thousands of members across the state, and we're here today to support digital right to repair. I have many reasons for doing so. I will limit my testimony today to 3 of them. First of all, consumer protection. I assume I'm not the only one who had a grandmother who said, use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without. But we can't follow that adage when companies like Apple intentionally design products to quickly become obsolete. I'm referring to Batterygate, in which Apple was discovered to be slowing down iPhone batteries, which they only admitted after being exposed by a consumer. That's just one example of big companies doing a huge disservice with their products to consumers. The result is Americans dispose of over 400,000 cell phones every day, in large part because companies design them to be obsolete or difficult to repair. The second reason is public health. We've heard already that electronic waste is a huge and growing concern in this country. If you break down that figure of 400,000 cell phones around the country, 8,000 of them are disposed every day in Massachusetts. And that means electronic waste is going into our landfills and incinerators. It's estimated that 40% of the heavy metals in the United States landfills come from discarded electronics. So we need to reckon with the public health problem of disposing this kind of material. The third reason is environmental protection. Working backwards from disposal, by far the largest impact of consumer electronics is in the manufacturing of them to begin with. One study found that building a new smartphone represents approximately 90% of the device's total CO2 emissions for 2 years. If these devices were made to last, and repair is key to that goal, less of them would be made and resulting in less damage to the environment. In summary, by far the easiest, cheapest, cleanest, and most sustainable way to address waste problems is to keep these products in use as long as we can, but repair is being blocked, and that's why we need this reform. We need to get back to that first word in the mantra that everyone knows: reduce what we use, reduce what we dispose of, reduce our impact on the planet. Right to repair literally gives us the tools we need to reduce consumer ripoffs, public health, and environmental pollution. Thank you for your consideration.
Hi, my name is Ryan. I'm a junior at UMass Boston and the chapter chair for our MassPerg chapter. I'm coming to speak on behalf of, just as a consumer, that have felt these grievances towards manufacturers. 3 specifically. I've had a smartphone for about 10 years, an iPhone for 7-ish, and each and every one of them has issues with its charger port. One specific one, I accidentally dropped it and the screen cracked, my fault. So I brought it to the Apple store. They said, well, we can't fix it, but we can send it out and have it be in the shop or wherever it has to go for about 3 weeks, and have me not have a phone for 3 weeks, or have something that's not resembling the phone I had in a society or world that we need to stay connected for me to be able to go to school, check and update with any sort of my classes on my phone and whatnot. And so and then actually I went to the kiosk to get the screen repaired, and it broke within about 2 months after it was repaired, because the screen that was replaced wasn't actually the screen that needed to be put on the phone, because it was not the actual screen that Apple provides when you first buy the phone. Another one is I actually had a PS4 growing up in high school, and I actually really appreciate Chair Chan bringing up the console issue, because this is exactly what happened. I sent it out to get repaired after about a year or so, and it was out for about a month at Sony, where we were told to send it to them, and it came back, and the issue still persisted, actually. They didn't even fix it themselves, which is even more ironic if they're the manufacturer themselves. And also, growing up with my mom, we actually had a washer and dryer, where the washer broke down after about, I don't know, a year or so. It was our first washer and dryer with my mom, and we were taking it to the laundromat for a long time before we got the washer and dryer. And the washing machine broke. We couldn't get it fixed ourselves, so we had to hire somebody from the appliance place that we bought it from, Cam Appliance on Cape Cod. And after 3 or 4 visits of them not being able to figure out what was wrong with the washing machine that they sold to us, we're told to just have to buy a new one. And at that point, I just didn't think that was any sort of an issue, that was something that we had to do. And it seems more and more nowadays we're given problems and sold the solution. And it's almost indicative by the little things that are put on chargers nowadays to make sure your charger doesn't scrunch up and break, rather than making sure that the chargers themselves don't do that over time, as the company themselves should do. But thank you so much. I don't want the beeper to go off, so I'm going to cut it off right now. It's been scaring me the whole time.
Yeah, the chargers, the alarm thing is no fun, as everyone's discovered. Any questions? There being none, thank you for so much taking the time to come up.
No, thank you too.
Next up is Christina Fisher from TechNet.
Good afternoon, Chair Chan, Chair Feeney. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify before you this afternoon. My name is Christina Fisher. I'm the Executive Director for the Northeast for TechNet. Since I've been before you before, I won't go through the whole spiel on who TechNet is, but I did want to first start by saying that we're here in opposition to the Red to Repair bills. We've heard a lot of conversations here today, so I'll try not to repeat what's been said before me, but I think something that's resonated with me is something that you heard early on here, is this is legislation in search of a problem. If the problem that we're seeing here is a concern for consumer choice, I think that it's been demonstrated today that there is consumer choice. You can go to your original manufacturer to get a repair, you can go to an authorized dealer to get a repair, or you can go to an independent repair shop to get a repair. There's plenty of consumer choice. Consumers can choose which electronics they buy, and they can choose whether, if they don't like certain manufacturers, to choose other ones in the future. But the reality is that some of the people that you're hearing from today greatly seek to profit off of this legislation being passed. Second, if another conversation that we've had today is about e-waste and recycling. I don't think that's really the intended goal. I think it's an additional talking point. But if we do have concerns about e-waste and recycling in the state, then we should be having a conversation on how best to improve our e-waste and recycling programs. This legislation has been filed in over 21 states, and no state has passed this legislation, and that's for a reason, including several of your neighboring states which have looked at this, including Vermont, which I know was mentioned earlier, but I think it's worth noting that they conducted a 4-month task force, and ultimately that report resulted in no legislation being filed the next session. I guess I want to conclude just by mentioning that Massachusetts has always prided itself in being pro-innovation, and passing this legislation would send the unintended message to the business community that if you innovate and you create, that you no longer have that value to yourself, and that it's allowed to be shared with others. So I encourage the committee to think thoughtfully about this before advancing this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for individual? There being none, thank you very much for your time. Next up is Dan Jaffrey. I think that's how you pronounce it. Jaffrey.
Good afternoon, Chairman Paul Finney, and also Mr. Chan. Let me give a little history of myself. I'm an electrical engineer from way back. I've been in the industry of computers for over 35 years. Presently, I'm semi-retired and eventually will be fully retired. In my efforts on my way out the door, I want to be sure that education is passed forward. So I spent a lot of time on a forum called iFixit. In fact, I am so desired, I get over 500,000 hits per month. So 500,000 a month. And that's actually on the low side. So my answers to those people who are desperate to get their equipment refixed are often used to help them out. You've heard a lot of discussion from a lot of different people here for and against this bill. I am personally very much for it because in truth, you're getting a lot of disinformation from the opposing group. There is no opportunities for a lot of this equipment to be repaired independently as they claim. These pieces of apparatus are then collected by an independent and shipped off to a manufacturer. They're not repaired locally. Apple is a good example. An authorized independent will be picking up the equipment. Some minor things might be done, but the majority of the repairs are sent off. So that's nonsensical. As far as the devices themselves, a lot of them today now have what's called DRM, digital rights management, in protecting the individual elements of the device, example, batteries and the display assemblies, so that you can't use just any display or any battery. In fact, you can take two exact phones, let's say 11s, iPhones 11s, and you take the battery out of one and put it into the other. It will not be recognized by that other phone, even though it's a real Apple battery. And that gets into that DRM because each element in that phone is ID'd only to that phone. So you can't even use a real iPhone battery from one phone to another phone, which is ridiculous. Our industry collectively is in dire need of being able to have access to the appropriate equipment to first diagnose, to get the parts, and to also be able to repair the device, as well as the information. Some of us make the effort to learn a device by buying one and tearing it apart and then documenting it, which is in third hand versus first hand. And we really need to get off that realm because we really want to repair these devices for the benefit of the consumer. I handed you a little document there in regards to carbon. Carbon is the big question here. As you know, carbon in many different elements is becoming an outfall into our environment. And the sequestration of carbon is the most important thing. And if these devices aren't fixed, then you're adding more carbon into our environment. I hope that answers your questions.
Thank you for taking time. Any questions from the membership? There being none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I got Louis Rossmann from Rossmann Group, Inc.
Hi, my name is Louis, and I run a repair shop in New York City. Before I get started, I think it's important to address a point that Mrs. Fisher just brought up, which is that there are many people that are seeking to profit from this legislation. And I agree that it's an important point. I think it's important to look at who paid to be here today versus who is being paid to be here today when looking at who is opposing the legislation and who is in favor of that legislation. That being said, let's just go back to a general idea that I have, which is that law is downstream from culture. Culture happens first. Now, about 3.5 years ago, I made an educational video showing you what to do if you have water spilled into a MacBook and it gets in the trackpad area. I showed how to replace a fuse that blew in this customer's case, that their keyboard and trackpad didn't work. And 3 months later, I heard from a law firm of Kilpatrick and Townsend asking on behalf of Apple if I would take this video down. Why do I bring this up? I bring this up because the appliance lobbyist over there said that this is a solution in search of a problem. However, I don't often see people paying $1,200 an hour to create when there's no problem. There is a problem, which is that when I show you where a fuse is in a product, I can get in trouble for that. There were also individuals that brought up that authorized repair is very good and it does the job very well. But then I'd also bring up the question as to a CBC News piece that came out last year where there was a bent pin in a cable of a laptop and they wanted $2,000 to fix this. I fixed it on camera in 30 seconds by bending back the cable. When it comes to the video games console manufacturers, if authorized repair is so good there, why is it that if the video plug breaks on your PlayStation that the authorized repair time is 3 to 6 weeks to fix that when I can teach a 16-year-old how to do that job inside of 5 to 15 minutes? The issue here is that the culture has changed, but the law has stayed the same. The laws that are being used to say that I shouldn't have access to a document that says where the fuse is, or if I show this, where this keyboard fuse is, that I could be in trouble and have my business in jeopardy, is a law that was created 50, 70, 90 years ago when the culture was different. Back then, if you open your refrigerator, you open your television, there's a schematic there that tells you how to do all of this. I, as a normal person, not even a repair shop owner, could call up the company and say, can I get this thing for my vacuum and my radio? Or you could just go to Radio Shack and get it. Now you have to see how it is today, where if you have a MacBook Air and the SMC chip that reads your battery and can tell what your battery percentages dies, I can't replace that chip easily because it has firmware on it. If I tried to read that firmware, the chip will stop working. It's very similar to this TV show called 24, where Jack Bauer would interrogate terrorists, and if he's like, where's the bomb? The terrorist would take a cyanide pill and go, you're never going to find out. The chip does that. It erases itself. This is something that was unheard of 50 or 70 years ago, but the laws have not evolved. I think that the law needs to evolve to keep up with the technology, and the last excuse that I heard was, this has been denied in every state. Why Boston? Why Massachusetts? Wouldn't that have been a great attitude to have 250 years ago? That's it.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the members? Senator Feeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. Although I think Chloe would have been able to help Jack Bauer figure anything out. You mentioned, you said if you show, I believe you used the example of a fuse. If you show a consumer where that fuse is, or if you figure that out and repair that, that you could potentially be in trouble, or your business could be in trouble. Are there stories of independent repair shops that are contacted by manufacturers and that do get sued or, in trouble? Could you just maybe elaborate on that, or what your fear is that could happen to you?
My fear in terms of it happening to me is that I replied saying, if you want this video down, don't call me from your law firm, file a public DMCA claim where you have to say what the problem is. That creates the PR nightmare of them having to say, we don't want our customers to know where a fuse is. They never did because of public backlash. But realistically speaking, at any given time, they could go through with it and they would probably win the case. I've heard of other companies being contacted similarly. There are people here who post on iFixit Answers. iFixit is a business that has been contacted several times over things on their website, although I don't have exact details to it, and they're not here to speak on it. But it's something that we all live in fear of.
So you post a video, and then you get contacted by an attorney representing a manufacturer. And what does that attorney tell you? Are you liable? Are they going to sue you? They tell you to just
trade
demand
secret,
to take
copyright,
it down?
this, that, and the other. And the thing that's interesting to me is the document that showed on screen, it's essentially something that's already sold to you. So when you buy the machine, you can tell where that is just by measuring. It's simply sold to me in a different form if it's sold via schematic versus via the actual product. It would be like if I sold you a book in Latin and then somebody else gave it to you in English. You already have the book in front of you. It's just confusing. You could easily difficultly more to say, translate it to English if you'd like to using an online translator. It's just a pain in the ass.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Next up is a panel. We have Gay Gordon, Nathan Proctor, Roni Sukhiya. They're representing Open Blockchain, Electronics Recycling, and the Repair Association. Yeah, yes, I have. Did we get everybody right?
Yes.
All right.
Guess I'll go first. Hello, everybody. My name is Nathan Proctor. I work as the National Campaign Director for the Right to Repair for US PIRG, which is the kind of parent organization for Mass PIRG. I brought a written testimony. I'm not going to go through it. I kind of want to address a couple things that we've heard so far. Just to clarify a couple things. I mean, you've all heard the arguments now. You know that this is an important issue for environmental advocates. You know it's an important issue for small businesses. You know it's an important issue for consumer advocates. But now you face a difficult set of contradicting, fact landscapes about what this means and what it will do in the world. And I think that Lewis put it really well, that what's happening is that the companies that make our stuff are trying to change the social compact about what it means to own something and what they have to provide us as owners of products, whether that's a cell phone or a computer or a washing machine or a tractor. Do we have the right to use that as we see fit, or do they have to protect us from making bad choices or from, unintentional decisions that we might make on our own. And to me, that's just not the social contract that we set up. Apple sold me the phone and now I own it. John Deere sells me the tractor and then I own it. They're not in charge of making sure that I don't accidentally run into my garage with it. They're not expected to shut off the engine if I was to drive it in the wrong part of the whatever, right? We are in charge of our own actions, but we don't control our own stuff. A couple things I wanted to clarify. We talked a couple times about authorized repair and authorized repair networks as being a way of training and giving data. You should, it's too bad that we don't have one of those contracts. I could probably show you a contract that Whirlpool would send out, for example, for how to become an authorized Whirlpool technician. It's 40 pages. There's nothing about having to know anything about fixing machinery in there. It's all about what kind of truck to drive, what kind of uniforms to wear, how much you're allowed to charge. It's not information, it's a contractual agreement to join and be beholden to the interests of that company. So when we say authorized repair, we mean manufacturer-controlled repair. People should be able to do what they want with the stuff that they buy. One other thing is that we talked a little bit about basically having access to repair information as being the same as having access to be able to overrun security measures. And that's just having access to hardware information and having the ability to break cryptographic software locks are like completely unrelated. And I would love to elucidate that more if you guys are interested, but I'm running out of time and I wanted to honor the time. Again, thank you so much, chairs, for letting me speak.
Hello, Mr. Chairmans and members of the committee. Rep. Rogers pretty much stole my entire presentation, so I'm going to wing it. A couple of things that came up is that OEMs are selectively deciding that they want to be responsible for us as customers. Every document that they present to you says otherwise. Every contract of sale, every warranty, and every end-user license agreement says they're not responsible. They disclaim absolutely everything up to the limits set by Massachusetts state law, which I believe is simply a test of gross negligence. So unless they are grossly negligent, they are not responsible for your safety. They're not responsible for your enjoyment, and they're not responsible for anything that you might do vis-a-vis emissions laws or any other laws. You as the person have those responsibilities. For example, if you are texting while driving and you get a citation, you get the ticket, not Apple and not GM. So if you keep in mind who owns it and who's responsible, almost everything that you will hear in opposition essentially makes no sense, because they are being very selective about what they want to claim as their responsibility. In fact, I would say that the only selectivity test is based on money. If they can force you to buy only their repair services at the prices that they set and block other repairs, they will be able to control how you purchase and how often you have to purchase a replacement. Now, one of the big problems is that we've done some studies since the last time I came before you that basically confirm that 90% of the products that currently are not repairable outside of the OEM. 90%. We're talking 90% of all the appliances, 90% of all the computers, 90% of all the farm implements, 90% of televisions. You can't, in fact, I think it might be 100% on TVs. It's a very, very bad situation. It has only gotten worse, and there's not much worse for it to get because we're no longer able to fix the things that we buy, which means we can't resell them either. So there's a lot of problems with here. I'm very proud that we actually had 25 states overall since we started with our first bill in 2014. And I'm really proud of us as an organization. We are all volunteer. Everybody that's here today paid their own way to get here. They took off time from work, and they believe in this strongly enough that they showed up with no paycheck. So I really think that we are doing what we're doing because we believe in it. We are here as consumers advocating for all consumers. Yes, some of us have repair businesses. I don't make a dime on any of this stuff. Some people here do, some don't. They're just passionate. They want to be able to continue to repair things for consumers as we've always done. So I thank you very much.
Hello, and thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Roni Sukhiya. I'm a resident of Lexington, Mass., and I run a company called TradeLoop, which for 22 years we've been a service business for the electronics recycling industry. I don't repair goods. I don't have a vested interest here other than I see what happens in my customer base, and it upsets me. And I'm going to talk about something new today, I think. I'll give you something new to think about. So, just to say, all of the things you've heard, early obsolescence is a big problem, not just in the sector. It's a problem for the viability of the reuse portion of the sector. Many of my customers end up going out of business because of this problem, and it's probably a contributing factor to a great extent in the general e-waste problem as well. But I'm going to talk about something else, blockchain. So I run an alliance called the Open Blockchain for Asset Disposition Alliance, which has about 100 members now, all of the leaders in our industry, including all the trade associations, the compliance organizations like CIRI, who's responsible for the responsible recycling standard that most of the world's recyclers use. And Everledger, which is the leading blockchain company, we've received a grant from the DOE to set up a lithium-ion battery recycling program nationwide, because we only collect 5% of those, and they contain cobalt and lithium, which are of national defense interest because we only get them from China, as well as a grant in Barcelona, a lot of stuff. So Fortune 500 has adopted blockchain without going into the technology itself. It's almost every single Fortune 500 company now has a team doing blockchain, and the manufacturers are no exception. Seagate is the one I'm going to use as an example of how this can go wrong for us. Not because Seagate's bad, in fact I think they're one of the good ones, but they're farthest ahead. They've produced a technology which they're now embedding in all new drives, which is essentially a fingerprint, they call it an EID, connected to the blockchain so that later on that drive can be checked for authenticity. And no plans announced as to what that check will do, but let's look at GM and Onstar, okay? Everybody knows when you use Onstar, if you are caught for speeding, or rather police, car stolen, or let's say you don't make your lease payments, they have the ability to shut the car off remotely. So you can see where this technology that Seagate is the first one to implement is going to lead. The manufacturers will have the cryptographic ability to talk to that device for the rest of its life, long after it's left their control. And they will have the ability to shut that device off or prevent it. So imagine you, with Internet of Things, IoT, and 5G coming, everything is going to be connected, all of it to the blockchain. So now you buy a toaster on eBay and it stops working because you're not authorized. So that said, this is a big problem. Like you folks were talking about, it's the end of ownership as we possibly know it. Technology is moving much faster, and the problem is going to get much worse, and the only solution is legislation. We need to get in front of this issue. So thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the membership? There being none, thank you very much for your time. For the education of the audience, we're down to 5 sign-up sheets and no individual, no panels. If anyone wishes to testify, please hold it. There's another sheet. All right, 6. We have 6. I feel like it's Sesame Street. 6 sheets. All right. Walter Alcorn from Consumer Technology Association's next.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to testify. My name is Walter Alcorn. I'm the Vice President for Environmental Affairs at the Consumer Technology Association. I just want to take a couple of minutes to address a couple of the environmental related issues that I've heard as reasons to support this legislation. And by the way, the Consumer Technology Association, we represent more than 2,000 companies in the manufacturing, retail, and installation of consumer technology, primarily consumer electronics companies. So So my 2 points are this. First of all, we agree that e-waste is an issue, but it's been some time since e-waste was a fast-growing part of the municipal waste stream. In fact, according to the US EPA, we are now the fastest declining part of the municipal solid waste stream. And it's driving me crazy because they only have data to 2015. But hopefully as they continue to track that, they'll show that continued deceleration of e-waste generation. More specifically, though, to this legislation, I've also heard some people claim that if you don't pass this legislation, then we're going to see a lot of devices going in the trash, going into landfills. One of the things that we do at CTA every couple of years is we do a comprehensive survey of consumers and ask them, what are they doing with their devices when they're done with them? Are they going to reuse? Are they throwing them in the trash? What are they doing with them? And here's what we found. We've heard mostly today from folks talking about mobile devices, so I'll just stick to those data. Only 2% of U.S. consumers say they are throwing away their device, their mobile device, whenever they're done with it. 2%. What's happening much, much more commonly, and this won't be a surprise, is people are trading them in. There's value in these mobile devices, and they're also giving them away to friends and family. They're also selling them online and sometimes in person. The reason that there's value in these devices is because they are being reused. There's not very much recycling value in an old smartphone, to be honest. Materially, it doesn't have that much really good stuff in there anymore. You really have to be a pretty high-end recycler to get good stuff out of what's in a phone. These all have value because they're being reused. So what I think it's important to understand is these are not devices that are going into landfills. They're actually going back into the reuse market and being used again. And I do understand there are people that want more of that business. I get it, totally understand, but saying that these things are going to landfill is not a reason to pass legislation like this. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the members? There being none, thank you very much for your time. We have Brad Madugo from AIM. I haven't seen Brad in a while.
Good afternoon. My name is Brad McDougall. I serve as Vice President for Government Affairs at AIM, Associated Industries of Massachusetts. Submitted written testimony, so I will dispense with the full reading of that, but just wanted to come before you today for highlighting not only our concern and our continued concern on this bill, but just wanted to highlight in particular that as a representative of over 3,500 companies and the issue that this represents, the language that's in this bill, and putting a spotlight on the impacts on the broader employer community than those that have already been talked about for the last couple of hours here, and that our concerns broaden to, chip makers, microchip processors, people that make things relating to robots, industrial manufacturers. So there is a much broader array of Massachusetts employers, from the Berkshires to the North Shore, Fall River, that we work with on a daily basis, that we've talked to, that have expressed concern about this. So again, like any other bill, would be happy to discuss any of those particular concerns or instances, but very much happy to continue to work with you and share information relating to the bill. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from members? Representative Dom.
So I may ask a question that you're not able to answer, but I didn't want to. I wanted to ask a manufacturer the question. Could you give us a sense of what percentage of profit is based in the maintenance contracts that companies give to consumers or offer to consumers when they buy the products?
Yeah, I don't know the exact answer to that. It's definitely another marketplace, but it's something I can do some research on and get back to you on.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from members? Thank you for your testimony, and you can give information to be helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman.
Brad actually reminded us again that the committee does take written testimony, so anybody who did not feel like coming up and want to profess something in writing, please do. My email box is suffering because it needs more stuff in it. So, next up is Ming Chow, Associate Professor from Tufts University.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Representative Chan, Senator Feeney, the committee. Thank you so much. So my name is Ming Chow, and I'm Associate Teaching Professor at Tufts University, and I've also been teaching cybersecurity for 15 years. Yes. The fact of the matter is, anything, hardware or software, can be reverse engineered. People are going to find out, and they will find out. We break stuff all the time to unravel the truth. Security and technology have almost no geographical borders. So other countries, Ukraine, they don't care about our laws here. Other countries, they don't care about our laws here. They're just going to help them. They're just going to break stuff. What's amazing is, and there's already a proliferation of information on hacking that includes documents, videos, source code, custom firmware, custom software, from a lot of the things that other parties, other participants have talked about today, including John Deere, video game consoles, webcams, medical devices, all publicly available. Washing machines, even that information, all publicly available. List goes on. Where can you find all this? GitHub, personal websites, YouTube, okay? Details of insecurities of such devices are already exposed on Shodan. Plenty of articles have been written on it. Once the details are out, sure, you can do a DMCA violation on it, but the information's already out. It's already hard to get back. Okay? Most devices were also not built with security in mind. Okay? Security by obscurity is not the answer. We're all going to find out somehow in some way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from membership? There being none, thank you very much. Next up is Tia Sutton from the Track and Engineering Manufacturers Association.
Good afternoon, Chairman Chan, Feeney, and members of the committee. I'm Tia Sutton, here today on behalf of the Truck and Engine Manufacturers Association, or EMA. We represent the world's leading manufacturers of commercial vehicles, as well as on- and off-highway engines used in several applications, including trucks, buses, and construction and farm equipment. The bills today that we are discussing broadly define digital electronic product. As such, they'd apply to all the products manufactured by EMA's members, and they'd allow anyone to access and change the microprocessors on engines, vehicles, and equipment that control critical safety, emissions, and performance systems. They'd result in significant adverse unintended consequences to the products manufactured by EMA's members. Such digital right to repair legislation simply is not needed for farm and construction equipment, commercial vehicles, or the engines that power them. Farm equipment manufacturers and dealers, as we've already heard, have committed to making service and repair information available to end users by 2021, and on-highway vehicles are already covered both by existing state law and an MOU signed in 2015. Further, federal EPA regulations already require that engine manufacturers make the same service information available to aftermarket service providers as they do to their dealers. The bills just go too far. They'll create unnecessary confusion, complications, burdens, and risks for users and manufacturers alike, and lead to significant adverse safety, environmental, and security impacts. Correct use of service information, such as diagnostic and repair tools, on the complex machinery manufactured by EMA members requires highly trained and skilled personnel. Allowing unfettered access to service information to untrained individuals will undermine the integrity of the equipment and allow for safety features like braking systems and anti-rollover controls to be altered and compromised. It will also increase the likelihood that untrained personnel will unintentionally or intentionally illegally alter or disable federally mandated emission control systems, and such illegal tampering is increasingly occurring today, especially on farm and construction equipment and trucks. EPA recently announced a national initiative to respond to numerous instances of engine tampering across the country, some of which include the use of software that alters or disables digitally controlled emission technologies. Tampering contributes substantial excess pollution that harms public health and air quality. And allowing access to software controlling federally regulated systems also exposes owners and operators to both civil and possibly criminal liability for tampering. The bills fail to contain any safeguards or restrictions to prevent or mitigate the risk of cybersecurity incidents. Widespread and unfettered access to service information increases the opportunity for hackers to improperly obtain or tamper with such information. We've already seen news articles describing instances of hacking on cranes and other large off-highway equipment. The bills will just make those efforts easier. For all these reasons, EMA requests that any digital right to repair bills clarify that all on- and off-highway engines, vehicles, and equipment are expressly excluded. They're not the type of consumer goods that appear to be the focus of the bill and already are covered by existing state and federal laws and manufacturer commitments. They'll create enormous safety, environmental, and security risks and liability exposure. So I will wrap up since my time has expired, but we really just want to highlight the concerns that we have as well as the concerns that could occur here in the state of Massachusetts. I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you. I assume we have your written testimony?
Yes.
Okay, so any questions from members? There being none, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
We have Jacqueline Gonzalez from Power Mobile.
Good afternoon. My name is Jacqueline Gonzalez Johnson. I'm coming here on behalf as a consumer, but I'm also speaking on behalf of my husband, who is a repair technician for the last 8 years, and we rely on that business. But most importantly, we rely on making our customers happy. Anywhere you go to fix your cell phone at Apple, if you go to T-Mobile, if you go to Verizon, the prices are extremely high. Sorry, I'm kind of nervous because I wasn't really supposed to be speaking, but as a mother of 3 children and as an owner of a business, cell phone repair, we have all the newest phones. We have the iPhone XR, all these new phones that Apple is coming out with. The newer the device, the most likely we won't be able to repair your device. The iPhone XR, I broke 2 of them in the last 3 months. And as a cell phone repair business owner, it's really like, it hurts my pride to have to walk into Apple and fix that phone because I know that, one, I have to pay $400 just for the repair, when I can buy that screen, if you guys pass this law, for about $180 for the iPhone XR. When I walked into Apple with all 3 of my phones, they didn't repair them. They just got rid of them and gave me a new phone. And a new phone's great, but I had to back it up. I had to travel 2 hours home because that was the nearest Apple, with no service because I couldn't upload it with Apple to get my cell phone service back on. Also, they were repairable. They were repairable. And people are saying that about all the recycled parts. We have bins and bins full of phones that need to be thrown away. So that's probably why they're not in the landfills yet. But you can only use so much product from those phones. You can only use the camera or the lens or the screen, and then the casing's going in the landfill. And on behalf of a consumer, it's really unfair that, we have to take time off to work to make an appointment with Apple when, if you come to our store, we'll have it fixed for you in 15 minutes, lower the price. You're not working 4 overtime hours just to pay for that new phone when we could have fixed it for you for $200, including the part and the labor. And I think that, in everything that we're trying to do, help, families who are struggling to even pay their rent, phones are what we rely on no matter what. So for them to be able to have a quick place to fix their cell phones is what should really matter. You know, everything's for profit in this world. Everything's for profit. You can make your own Chinese food instead of going to a Chinese food restaurant. Like, that's what everyone's doing to save money, and we need to help our consumers and help people who have children who use devices. You know, your children use devices all day. Like, they don't even play with toys anymore. And every time my child breaks a phone, it's cheaper, you know, if I go to a mom and pop shop to fix the phone, not because I want to outsell Apple or, you know, but I brought the phone. I paid so much money for the phone. We want to keep the phones, and we don't want to have to go buy a new iPhone XR or something else for way more when we break that phone and there's no way to repair the new phones.
Thank you for taking the time to come down and your patience to testify. Any questions from the panel? There being none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up is I can't read this. Zong Zimmerman. That's Sean. Sam. Sorry, they got the essay, and I can't read the rest of it. Thank you for taking time to come down.
So good afternoon. My name is Sam Zimmerman. I am just a hobbyist and a consumer, and I'm here, and I just wanted to say that I would not be in the state of Massachusetts if it weren't for being able to repair devices. Since I was a small child, you know, I had always enjoyed tinkering with things and repairing any device that, you know, my friends had that would break or something. Like one time my friend had a Game Boy, and the backlight had went out, and I was actually able to fix that by buying parts on eBay. But nowadays things are kind of moving more towards, as other people have talked about, the software lockouts. So you know, back, you know, in 2014 or so, I could buy parts for my Samsung Galaxy S4, and I could just pop the back off, replace the battery, and it would be super simple to do. You know, it cost me like $15, and I could just do it in 5 minutes. But now, you know, I have a Samsung Galaxy S10, which is different in that the screen is like glued on, and all the components are very difficult to get to. And there's guides online on how to do this, but you can never really know now if those software controls are going to be in place and preventing you from doing this. So, you know, you put the new screen on, you spend 2 hours, you know, being super careful, making sure that everything comes back together properly, and then you get a message saying that your screen is not genuine or something, and it just like shuts off and you can't use it. So I just wanted to come out here from a hobbyist perspective and state my concerns about that, and just that I would not have moved here for my work, which is with computers, if it weren't for my ability to tinker with them and kind of understand how they work.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the panel? There being none, thank you for taking time to come down. All right, we have William Hedberg, who is the last one currently to sign up. And if anyone else hasn't signed up yet, please do so at the end of the table here. Thank you.
So I definitely wrote more than I can fit into 3 minutes. So I'm going to end up kind of winging this to truncate it and get it into the time limit. I am a professional cybersecurity researcher, but I am here in my personal capacity. And I wanted to take a few moments to talk to you guys about the cybersecurity implications of the right to repair, and specifically to contradict the point that I heard made a moment ago by an industry representative, in that the assertion that the right to repair would harm cybersecurity. Specifically, there are a lot of instances in which industry claims that they do not want to provide repair information because they assert that it assists hackers in cracking their systems and jeopardizes consumers. But the reality is that more often than not, this is the opposite of the truth. There's an example recently that comes to mind, which is an exploit that was recently developed for basically every single Apple and iPad, or every single Apple iPod and iPad device that is currently in use. It's called Checkmate, with the ATE at the end replaced with an 8 in a colloquial form. And this vulnerability is actually, it allows attackers to jeopardize the phone during a very early step in the startup process. And with that, an attacker can actually intercept phone calls, text messages, credit card numbers, all kinds of information. And the thing here is that Apple is infamous for attempting to prevent release of information on the inner workings of their systems. As a result, this vulnerability wasn't discovered until very recently, and the vulnerability is present as far back as the original iPhone. Because of the fact that Apple chose to deliberately obfuscate the semantics of the way that their early boot code worked, they created a vulnerability that was not discovered until it was extremely widespread. In that sense, Apple actually jeopardized the consumers by not putting that information into the public. So there's going to be a lot of discussion over time about the fact that right to repair is somehow dangerous to cybersecurity. And I'd just like to make clear, in my opinion, as a cybersecurity professional, that this could not be further from the truth. I'd like to thank the committee, and I'd also like to thank Senator Jalen for co-sponsoring this, despite the fact that she's not here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking time to come testify. Any questions from the membership? There being none, thank you for your time. You're set.
Thank you very much.
At this stage, there's no one else to testify. We're going to close a portion of the hearing. We're going to open the executive session again. So we close this portion here. I need a motion to reopen the executive session.
Move to close the hearing and open the executive session.
Representative Livingston closes the hearing. A motion is open to executive session. I need a second. Second by Representative Dong. The hearing is closed and the executive session is open. For the sake of expediency, I'm not going to read the titles of bills, but just the result of the vote from today on the following bills. House Bill 200, 10 in favor, 0 against. House Bill 295, 10 in favor, 0 against. House Bill 3991, 10 in favor, 0 against. House Bill 3993, 10 in favor, 0 against. House Bill 4078, 9 in favor, 1 reserved their right. Senate Bill 2188, 9 in favor, 1 reserved their right. If the Senate Chair concurs as acceptable a vote, we will instruct staff to release bills.
So looks good.
Senator Feeney agrees with the House Chair, and the vote is accepted. The committee staff shall move the bills forthwith as quickly as possible. Motion to close the executive session.
So move.
Motion to close the session by Representative Livingston, second by Representative Dong. All those say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Executive session is now closed. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you all next week. On the 28th is the next hearing.